Everybody, Nate here from WASD20. Welcome back to RPG Class Vlog number 4, the final episode of 2018, because RPG Class is over. So in this one, I am going to be covering the last 3 days of the course. I will show you here that my entire RPG life is packed up into 2 storage bins here. Well, not my entire RPG life, but almost all my stuff from my bookshelf back home, all packed up, ready to head home. Yep, it's all over, guys. Oh, whoops, I'm screwing things up here. Anyway, so the plans, we're going to be going through day 7, 8, and 9, which are the last days of the course, and just going through what I did, and then I'll kind of share some big picture reflections on the course as well. But day 7 here, you can see that we had 2 presentations on Numenera and Fate. And then you may remember that on day 6, if you watched episode 3, we had been prepping to play these Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars RPGs. There are 3 of them. Age of Rebellion, we had 1 group playing that. Edge of the Empire, we had 1 group playing that. And I think we had 2 groups playing Force and Destiny, if I'm not mistaken. So 4 groups total. We had some students volunteer to GM those, which was really great. And they did really well. They did really, really well. I was impressed. People seemed to, I think going over the rules on day 6 was really helpful. I hadn't done that previously. Well, very, very slim, I guess, on the rules before. The first time I taught this class 2 years ago. But this time it went much more smoothly because we had covered the rules in pretty good detail. Now, I'm not entirely sure it was worth it. I was bummed to see still some pretty negative feedback on the games. A lot of students, the feedback they gave on what could be improved, they did say, this was just on a Google form that I gave on the last day, they did say that they didn't find that as valuable. A lot of them said they just didn't like the dice system, the narrative dice, or I don't know. I also think that the adventures that they have in the box are pretty linear. That might also be a factor for why they don't enjoy it that much. But yeah, overall that was one of the lowest ranked things from the last 2 weeks of the course. So I got some negative feedback last time, but I just felt like my last group was more negative in general. There were more students who were just kind of negative about things that weren't D&D. And I think it's still worth it. I think it's still good to give it a try. But I'm definitely rethinking that for the next time I teach this course and thinking maybe I should do something like Fate Accelerated. I want to do something that is not a D20 system, that's different from D&D enough in terms of setting as well. You know, something that's not just typical fantasy. So you could do Numenera, but that's a D20 system. Fate seems like a good candidate to me. It's different, very different from D&D. So that could be good. Yeah, definitely interested in hearing if you guys have any other ideas. Tales from the Loop might be a good one. I don't have that yet. I actually just reached out to Free League today, and I think they might be sending me a review copy. I'm super curious about that system. But yeah. Okay, so anyway, we'll continue on there, but they played that, and I thought they did well, but a lot of them didn't seem to enjoy it that much. They could have done without that. Let's see. Day 8. There we go. Day 8, we had 2 presentations. We had World of Darkness and Symbaroum, and those went well. All in all, the presentations were all really good, I thought. I can't remember which one it was. There was a couple, maybe 2 of them that I thought missed some of the very basic rules. Like, you guys didn't talk about this, so I kind of had to fill in some of the gaps afterwards for people. But for the most part, the presentations were a lot better than the last time I taught this course. I thought they went really well. And I think that is a really valuable part of the course, that even if students say, I didn't really like that, which some did, I want to keep that, absolutely. Because I want them, even though they might want to play D&D the whole time, I want them to learn about some other game systems and just know that it's a wider universe out there. So, yeah. Let's see. And I learned some. I've had the Symbaroum book for a while, but I learned some things in that presentation because I haven't read the whole thing yet. So that was good. Let's see. Then day 8 we did some, then we did our interview with Matt Click from Absolute Tabletop and from the YouTube channel A Fistful of Dice, who's a really good friend of mine, and it's just great talking to him because I like him. He's a good friend. And I get to share this awesome friend of mine with my students. So, and show them, isn't this guy cool? And they agreed. They thought he was cool. So they really enjoyed that. We started off by asking some general questions. We interviewed him for about 40 minutes, but some general questions on Absolute Tabletop, what the company is like, and what they, just what it's been like being an independent publisher. And then we jumped into more general GM or DM questions, RPG questions, and he showed us some of his session prep and some of his campaign notes and stuff like that, which was really helpful for students to see, I think. He's just a great dungeon master, and I was really glad my students got a chance to talk to him. They asked some good questions as well, and overall, that was a highlight of many students on the exit survey. The interview was something that they ranked very highly, and some of them even mentioned Matt by name. So that was really cool. Then we talked about plans for tomorrow, which I have those flipped there. We talked about plans for the last day when we were going to be having a sort of a free-for-all, what do you want to play sort of environment. I assumed that most of them would want to continue with their Lost Mine and Phandelver campaigns. That was not the case. So I'll tell you about what they did when we get to day 9. But so we kind of determined some things there. And then I had them working for the rest of the class period on some world building and game master exercises. I'll show you what we did here. I felt really good about this. I thought it went well. So I told students, let me see if I can read this off the screen. There we go. Create your own world and write a paragraph describing it. You do not have to include all of these things, but think about history, if known, significant locations, cities or towns, important people, races, religions, etc. It doesn't have to be a traditional medieval fantasy world, but if that's your preferred style, you may find that useful. So especially for students who have already maybe created a traditional medieval D&D style fantasy world, maybe they want to create something new. But a lot of students, they have never played D&D before. They've never GM'd a game before. So I encourage them, hey, if you like that style and that's what you want to do, which it seems like most of them do, then create that sort of world probably. Create something you will actually use, perhaps. So, yeah. Then I had them describe 3 specific locations in more detail. It could be cities or towns. Could have been a dungeon or ruins, I guess, too. And then letter C, now plan a session or an adventure hook based on their world building. So encourage them to think about NPCs, opportunities for role play, exploration, puzzles or traps, adversaries, loot, etc. Kind of encourage them to think about a little bit of variety in this adventure. Even if it is just a dungeon crawl, there's still ways to vary the encounters, so it's not just all combat, for example. So that went really well. I was really pleased with the results. I think that most students found it valuable. And some of them went all out. Some of them finished in class, but others of them were like, no, I'm not even close. I'm going to write a ton on this. And students typed up a lot of notes or hand wrote stuff. One student hand drew a map, which was really cool to see. We did not have time for any mapping tutorials. Just didn't work out this time. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a lunchtime session on that sometime. I don't know. But that went really well. I was really pleased with how students did on that. I am in the process of still kind of grading those. I want to, even though class is over and we're into a second semester now today, I want to get feedback back to those students. And just give them some of my thoughts and say, great work, or hey, did you think about this? And just kind of, I think that would, it would be good to do justice to their hard work and make it worth their while by actually grading those, even though I don't have to. Last day was day 9. We went over our final history lesson. You may remember that on day 6, I think it was, we did the moral panic of the 1980s, the satanic panic. And then we went on to basically the rest of the history of D&D. So that was a lot. I skimmed for sure. But main themes there, talking about the fall of Gary Gygax, if we can call it that, and how he was ousted from TSR, and then the eventual fall of TSR and the selling of D&D to Wizards of the Coast, and then Hasbro buying Wizards of the Coast. And then we just kind of talked about the various editions. So talked about 2nd edition, 3rd, 3.5, 4th. Talked about Pathfinder and how that came out of the transition to 4th. And I think that was new. A lot of this stuff was very new to these students, even if they played D&D. I think that they didn't really know much about the edition. So, and I kind of summarized like how they were received and what they were like, generalized a little bit. And then, of course, 5th edition. And talked about the state of things right now and how, at least from my perception, and I assume many of you too, I think we can say that we're seeing a bit of a revival of tabletop role-playing games and of Dungeons and Dragons, with things like Critical Role and Twitch streaming. I mean, this is, it's bananas. It's crazy. And so that's kind of a cool place to be. And the fact that I have 20 kids here at Grand Rapids Christian High School, and there are another 20 or so, 15, 20, who meet every Tuesday after school for RPG Club. And those are different kids for the most part. Like, those kids aren't in my class. That's about 40 kids playing tabletop role-playing games at school. That's huge. I think that's a sign of the times. Now maybe there were big RPG clubs and big D&D clubs and stuff for years at other schools, but that's pretty new here. And when you tell kids about tabletop role-playing games, they're starting to hear about it more. And it's not a thing that these students have to fear of being persecuted because of, or of being made fun of, or whatever. So that's cool. I think that's new. So I kind of talked just a little about that, and how in my mind it's a bit of a revival of this hobby, or a bit of it's reached a new level in some ways. And I think that's true in a lot of areas of what we might call geek culture. I don't really like using that term, but yeah. All right. Then we had some closing thoughts and resources. I put some of my GM tips and player tips into this packet here, stapled them together. I was going to try to get nice little booklets. I also put this front page on just about tabletop RPGs in the life of a Christian, basically, because it's a Christian school. I talked about how I kind of have 4 pillars of how to play these games well, and how I encourage them to think about these games and the place they can be in their lives. So, number 1, use these games as an opportunity to show hospitality, welcoming people, making the game table a warm environment, being a gracious host, and practicing the discipline of hospitality, and even inviting those who may feel left out and who aren't being invited other places. I think that's a key part of this hobby that I encourage everyone to think about. Yeah. Number 2, find a healthy place for gaming and other hobbies. This is just kind of about, hey, some of you are obsessed with video games or with D&D or whatever it is, other things too. And sometimes we get too into our hobbies. So find a balance. Find a healthy balance in your life where this is a worthwhile hobby. This is something that is great to do. It's awesome. But don't neglect other important aspects of your life, your family, whatever it might be. Number 3, consider redemptive narratives. I really think there's value in any good story, but I encourage my students to think about, what these stories, not just a story, but what can they tell us about life? How can they have value, like a good book or like a good movie? And I encourage them to think about narratives of redemption, of hope, of sacrifice. Not that all their stories need to be about these things, but those things seem to connect pretty well with our faith, and I find them valuable in stories that take place in any genre, but in tabletop role-playing games, absolutely. Number 4, exercise your creativity. Use tabletop role-playing games as a way to express yourself, as a way to to be your creative self. And yeah, so I think that's a thing that I love about tabletop role-playing games is there's so much creativity in the world building, in the running of the game, in the painting miniatures, and the drawing maps, and it's crazy. So I love it for that, and I encourage kids to embrace that. Then I put my RPG player tips. Then I had my Game Master tips, RPG reading list and resources. I'll post all this stuff on my website. 10 reasons why role-playing games are a positive force for kids. I can't remember if I mentioned this article, but this is one I pulled out online and printed out because I know these students are going to face, some of them at least, are going to face some criticism from people in their lives perhaps, and I wanted to make sure that they feel like they have some reasons to believe these games are a real force for good, and they can be a very healthy thing for young people and for anyone. Then we played. So I mentioned that I gave them some choices. I assumed that they would all want to continue with their Lost Mine of Phandelver campaigns. One group had a TPK, so they were doing their Sunless Citadel. But that group decided they didn't want to do Sunless Citadel again. The GM was like, I don't really want to run it again. And another group asked me if I would run Oath of the Frozen King for them. So I gave them choices. I said, you guys can continue doing what you're doing. You can play something else. Same group, different group. Or if anyone wants me to run something, I will gladly run Numenera, the kind of beginner box thing. One of the other Star Wars beginner box things, I can't remember, beginner games, I think they're called. Or Oath of the Frozen King if they want to run, if they want to play some 5e. And I had 6 students say, will you run this? And I said, yes. In hindsight, I think that I should have prepared for that a little more and really thought out, oh, what if there's 6 students? I think a 7th wanted to go to, and I said no. It was just going to be too much. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to take away too many students from other groups, and I kind of did. There was one smaller group that didn't know what they wanted to do, and they ended up, I kind of showed them some stuff, and they ended up playing Dread, and I have no idea how it went, and I'm leaving you with that suspense, and I'm in suspense too, because my game went right up to the bell. Like, it was 2 minutes to spare, and came in and like I had to give away a DM screen because I was I did a drawing for one dungeon master who ran a game during the class to win one of the 5e DM screens. Bought a brand new one. Gave away one of the Star Wars boxes to one of the Star Wars DMs too. Did a drawing for that, and went right up to the bell. And have no idea how their Dread game went. And I really want to know, so I'm going to track these students down and try to find out how did that go and what you think. But I went on Drive-Thru-RPG and bought the thing and printed it out and said, here you go, good luck, and see you tomorrow. And I think they played it. Yeah. So Oath of the Frozen King went really well. It was 6 students, so it was hard to keep things moving when you have that many people, but we just in the nick of time finished the thing. The players were great role playing, great kind of strategizing and thinking and teamwork and stuff like that. So that was really cool to see some obstacles that they overcame, and they lived and finished the quest. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Overall, the class was really great. I am probably not going to be teaching this class next year again because I'm going to be doing what I did last year, hoping to lead a group of students on a World War II tour in Europe for like 9-10 days, which is what I did last year. It's a great opportunity, but I don't like to travel every year. I could propose awesome trips all over the place every year, and I could probably get enough students, but I like teaching here too because I get to do classes like this, and like So You Want to Slay a Dragon. So I would miss that a lot. But so I'm planning on likely doing this class in 2 years, but it's 2 years away, so who knows? Lots of things could happen. Yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for watching these videos, for commenting and asking good questions, and I welcome those once again. Leave those down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and yeah, everybody take care. You'll see me again very soon.